Okay guys, so touching in for a crypto market analysis video. Been a long time since I've done one of these, about a year now. Last one was actually on the 23rd of February last year, so been a while, but touching back in, I'm going to try and do these much more regularly. And yeah, previously I was scripting stuff. I'm not going to do that anymore. So it's going to be much more on an ad hoc basis, much more improv. And yeah, apologies if I sort of fumble on my words at all. I will get through it as best I can, but I'm going to try and be a bit more free flowing. And yeah, I don't have the time to script anymore. So we'll just try and put these videos out, I don't know, 2, 3 times a week, and yeah, sort of go from there. So let's dive into it. So these videos going forward are just going to be solely crypto based, not looking at traditional markets, equities, the dollar, etc. Just focusing all efforts on crypto. So yeah, it makes sense to start with the king, BTC, and we'll go from the higher time frame down. So as you can see, this is the 3-day picture here, and we're currently in quite an interesting spot. So the divergence that was over here, we had a 3-day bear div across both the RSI and the awesome oscillator. So that was in conjunction with a sweep of this high at the 48,189 level. You can see that price makes a higher high whilst the oscillators are making lower highs. And as a result, we start to see a correction in the markets. Okay, so we've had, what is it? A max of 21.6 on the pullback here. And we're currently in an interesting spot, right? Because basically, once you have these divergences in play, you're either looking really for the retest, which is where it comes down to the mid-level, and then, that's the cool off, then goes back up for another leg, or further continuation rather. Or we see it come down to the extremes. Now, considering we are in a bull market, it may be the former, maybe the latter. I don't know. We'll zoom into some of the lower time frame price action today, because we've had some very interesting price action today that might dictate the direction over the coming weeks. The only concern about a potential bounce at this mid spot here is this cluster we've got here. Okay, so essentially this in here, all of this. This stuff here, it's not really what I want to be seeing. Basically all these lows here, if we zoom a little bit closer in, now looking at the daily, you can see basically that this grind up, whatever you want to call it, vertical accumulation, blah de blah, is basically, we have compression in this area, and we have just a bunch of untapped lows in here which are, ripe for the taking. So that's the counter argument to where we're at and seeing a bounce in the markets now. But I'm just going to scroll down to the 4-hour now, because we've had some really interesting price action. Well, we have some really interesting price action which is forming on the 4-hour. So I'm just going to zoom into that now quickly. So we can see here now what I'm talking about a little bit more clearly. So again, this is still that 3-day level that was taken out there. And I'm just going to mark on the range at the moment on the 4-hour side of things. Okay, so it's something like this, and essentially this is a pretty significant candle we're seeing here, which is closing in about 6 minutes time. Will be in the past once I release the video. But you can see that, yeah, we had this range that was forming, deviation to the top, swept the higher time frame level, came back in, closed, confirmed, and then was a little bit range bound around the sort of mid-range area, came down here. We put in this slight mini divergence here on the 4-hour, and then essentially went to reclaim the range here. So from a 4-hour perspective, this could look like the potential deviation reclaim. What we would want to see, of course, is then the mid-level taken and then targeting the range highs and then potentially further on for fresh highs locally as well. Now, the nice thing about this is we have very clear parameters to work with, okay? So we now have a little bit of a demand cluster, which is in here. And we've obviously got the 4-hour reclaim, deviation, candle confirmation, whatever you want to call it as well to work with. So essentially, we've got this range low level, we've got this demand zone here. So we really want to see price holding above this for further continuation. If we start coming underneath this level, then it's probably continuation lower and a fake out. But yeah, all in all, from a price action perspective, things are looking good for the bulls. As I said, they need to hold this level. They need to put in a proper push here and really sort of have a follow through on this candle. But yeah, all in all, a promising sign on the BTC side of things. So I've just come over to total. Want to have a look at total and total 2. Total being the total market cap of the cryptocurrency space, and then total 2 being just the alts, so excluding BTC in there. So starting with total, again, we can see, looking at the weekly here, super clear picture on the high time frame, right? Okay, so we've had this sort of accumulation range bound phase down here for 530 days, and we broke past that level, had the breakout, have obviously struggled a bit up here, seen some sort of consolidation, slight correction off the back of the fact we were overextended on the weekly on the RSI. As to whether we get a further pullback and a retest to this level before continuation is anyone's guess. But for me, as long as we're above that level, there's no reason to be panicking at all. Still confirm that we're in a bull market, still in very much uptrending conditions. And yeah, we can see, guys, this happened the last cycle as well. And, it's pretty clear what happened afterwards. You have the retest in this instance, okay, but you can see there was just a huge raging bull market that occurred afterwards, and this was slightly longer, about 770 days of accumulation down here. But regardless, we're seeing a very similar pattern this cycle, and between total and total 2. I mean, these are some of the key indicators that I'm looking at on the higher time frames for the sort of confirmation that we are in the bull market and we are in trending conditions. You can see here I put out a tweet before, and this is a potential retest zone. Again, whether we get this retest to the SR level before continuation is anyone's guess. We saw exactly the same pattern last time, yet again. And as you can see, we had a fair bit of consolidation here above the level once the breakout was made. So that's not to call for this sort of price action immediately here. We could see some sort of range bound activity here for some time, which would coincide nicely into the Bitcoin halving. But yeah, yet to be seen. But as long as we're holding the level, then everything's looking good. Investments are being made on the spot side into altcoins, etc. And yeah, we're positioning accordingly based off the back of this higher time frame thesis. So I've just come over to ETHBTC. We can have a look at what's going on over here. Again, notes on the chart from a tweet I made a week or two ago. We can see that there was very interesting structure that was printed, okay? We took out this low, failed at sort of diagonal resistance here. As we did so, we printed a bullish divergence, okay, with a strong bullish engulfing candle. So price action and the candle bodies made lower lows, whilst both the oscillators made higher lows, okay, across the RSI and the awesome oscillator. As you can see now, we're in an interesting spot because we failed at this diagonal resistance, which would be the potential point of breakout, and we're coming back down into the red candle body before the impulse candle, aka the order block. So we may see some sort of bounce here if we do, and see some coiling up and then break out of this trend line. Happy days. If not, then we'll have to reassess. We may be seeing lower prices, lower stance on ETHBTC And that would then knock on to the alt market, of course, and BTC Dominance. But at the moment, not fussed about this picture at all. Still been positioning into altcoins. We all know ETH will have its time, unless this time is different, of course. So yeah, not fussed on that stance at all. Essentially, ETHBTC is higher time frame range bound here, so not of any concern. Now let's move on to Bitcoin dominance, as we just briefly touched on it. Again, looking at the weekly here. So notes on the chart, essentially we are up against this key higher time frame level on the weekly. We had this sort of overstretched divergence across the awesome oscillator, which seems to potentially be in play here, again with the break of the trend line. But essentially nothing is confirmed on that side of things. We really have to see ETHBTC to make that push, break the trend line, and then we're hoping to catalyze a move like this, which is, as you know, what everyone's hoping for, to see the alt season. But yeah, ETH and the alts need to put in some work here to make that happen. If not, we may see a reclaim of this level, slightly higher deviation, come back underneath, and that might be the push there. Okay, so that's BTC dominance across the weekly. The only counter argument on the sort of more bullish side of things, in terms of BTC increasing its market dominance, is the fact that the weekly has now come down and is bouncing off the midpoint. Okay, so we really want to lose this level on the RSI if we're to see any downside here. But yeah, keeping an eye on things as we progress. And yeah, still very happy scaling into certain positions in terms of spot holdings for longer term position trading / investing. So before we close off this video, need to of course touch on ETH itself. Apologies, I've done this in a bit of a funky order, but as I say, it wasn't very planned, just doing this off the top of the tongue. So we're now looking at the weekly on Ethereum, and the only point of concern here really is the fact that we are into this resistance zone here. And as we do so, we are putting in this divergence here as well. Okay, again, this isn't being printed on the weekly. I haven't had a look on the 3-day, but it might be so a little bit more there. Yeah, you can see, okay, we've got the double humps here on the awesome oscillator now, as price came up into the resistance level. So again, not the prettiest picture for ETH in particular. The only saving grace I can see is that there's a bit of a level here. Okay, so we've got a bit of an SR level that we can work with here. Again, it's an interesting spot because we do have these higher time frame bearish divergences, but as we've seen before, we've got this 3-day mid retest. So again, we really want to see this level hold for continuation higher. Lose this level here, and it could be either that this low here is swept before reclaiming the SR and pushing up, or if we start seeing price hold and close underneath this level, which is the sort of 2110 level, then we could see slightly low prices on ETH as well. Now we've had a look at the high time frame. Let's just zoom down to the slightly lower time frames. Here we're looking at the 4-hour. So we can see we've had a really nice push recently with this last candle. And again, with the sort of BTC deviation in play, we could see a push up here potentially. If you're looking at something like this, it's not looking too shabby. The only thing to note on ETH is that we are obviously in very bearish market structure here. Okay, so we have we've got some pockets of liquidity here to overcome as well, and that is a slight point for concern. Okay, so as you can see here, there's a clean 4-hour supply cluster, 2-hour supply cluster, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, if price can start climbing into this supply area, this is going to be where my eyes are on basically, because these sort of pockets of liquidity, when they're clean enough, can act as really good indicators for what price is trying to do and how well it's doing it, essentially. So if we climb back up, start failing here, and we start seeing some high positive delta into this zone and start failing, then okay, we're looking for a fresh leg down. But you know, on the flip side, this is a clear technical supply zone. So if we breach this and start holding it, flip it as a breaker, then we can see higher prices as well. Okay. So yeah, at the moment, eyes on this zone for an indicator of ETH strength. Currently, from a price action alone perspective, things aren't looking too great on the ETH side. Again, we're back, you know, sort of bracketing between these two higher time frame levels. But it's interesting to note some of the delta we've picked up in this sort of area down here. So I'm just going to flip over to Agar so we can see the aggregated flow and just make a few observations on that side of things. Now, I didn't really touch on the flow side of things for Bitcoin, mainly because there's not anything too notable. Also, just put out a tweet on that side. But looking at ETH, we can see, again, we're looking at the hourly here for reference, and we can see there's not really anything notable on the perp v spot basis. There's pretty much full alignment there. But what we can see is there was a ton of negative delta collected here at the lows on ETH, okay, which is aiding the bullish picture. And for those of you that don't understand what delta is, that's absolutely fine. I suggest checking out my order flow video. But essentially, what this means is there was market selling into limit bids, okay? And we always consider limit to be the stronger hand because the bigger market participants operate via limits. The apes operate via market, and that's pretty much the way it goes as a general rule of thumb. And on the spot v perp side of things, essentially we want to see you know, more limit bid absorption on the spot side because that's more substantial as a sort of theory for reversal. And we can see that quite cleanly here, okay? There's much more negative delta on the spot side than the perp side. So yeah, there's interesting pieces of the puzzle on the sort of delta dynamics. Looking at ETH, we can see that basically there was a ton of spot absorption via limit bids as price came down into this sort of 2200 level. So yeah, it's a slightly mixed bag, ladies and gents. I'm not going to lie. You know, the price action side of things on ETH is looking pretty nasty at the moment. But then on the flip side, we do have a bunch of negative delta, especially on the spot side, which is auspicious. So yeah, all in all, to conclude, there is a mixed bag. Essentially, what we would hope, what the bulls would hope, is that the high amount of negative ETH delta, as well as the range low, 4-hour range low reclaim on BTC is enough for the sort of bottom to be marked here, locally speaking. But again, we've got, you know, some really nice parameters to work with, i.e. the range low and that demand cluster I showed you on BTC. You know, as long as we hold above those areas, then we're good for continuation higher. But yeah, on the flip side, bulls have a lot of work to do. Again, we have to see this cluster overtaken on ETH, this SR level taken as well. So there are some technical levels and zones that we need to overcome. But eyes are on the charts. So I hope this was helpful, guys. As I said, very rusty on this one. I'm going to try and find my flow again nicely. And yeah, I hope it was of use. So if you guys have any sort of suggestions as to what content you want to see, this was just a quick market analysis. But if you want to see, you know, more of alts, for instance, more trade reviews, any sort of more educational snippets, please let me know in the comments below. And yeah, happy trading, guys.